Must be getting close to a quorum.
I think we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, you have your quorum.
Okay, well, since the clock has struck 6:31, I propose that we open the meeting. Welcome, everyone. It's been a long time since our last meeting, and we've got a full agenda, chock full of policies to review and approve. And before we begin, I wanted to recognize two new representatives that have come on since our last meeting. First, Josh Grims representing Berkshire. I don't know if he's on, but welcome in either event. And secondly, Nicholas Nadeau replacing Sarah Had for Fairfax. With that, first, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing not, then we'll get into the introductions. And as usual, I will go through each town and respond if you're present, a representative from the town, and then I'll turn it over to Catherine for the staff. So we'll start with Alburgh Town.
Alex McCracken, Town of Alberg.
Okay, Alburgh Village, vacant. Bakersfield.
Linda McCall.
And Bill let me know he's traveling, so would be unable to make it.
Berkshire. Hearing none. Enosburg Falls. Oh, that's vacant. Yeah, Enosburg Falls. Enosburg Town. Fairfax.
Barbara Murphy here for Fairfax.
Fairfield.
Julia Callan for Fairfield.
Chuck Fitterber, Fairfield.
Fletcher. Lori Rupel, I see you're there. You were on mute. Franklin.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm here.
Anyone from Franklin? Okay. Georgia.
Kirk Waite from Georgia.
Grand Isle.
Alphabetical, Howard.
Oh, let's go by seniority. You go first.
Barclay Morris from Grand Isle.
And Howard Demise from Grand Isle.
And with Georgia, I forgot to speak up and say that Carl let me know he had a conflicting meeting, but will try to come later.
Great. Highgate.
Jack Pelkey, Highgate.
Isle Lamont.
Sylvia Jensen.
Montgomery. North Hero.
Andy Alling, North Hero.
Mike Curtis, North Hero.
Richford. Sheldon. St. Albans City.
Chip Sawyer, St. Albans City.
Elizabeth Nance, St. Albans City.
St. Albans Town.
Marietta Shelton, St. Albans Town.
South Hero.
Bob Durman.
And Peter Zamor. Swanton Town.
Harold Garrett, Swanton Town.
Nicole Draper, Swanton Town.
Swanton Village. All right. Catherine, can you handle the staff?
Sure. Before I do that, we had 2 folks join,
Ah,
actually 3,
thank you.
after you went through the towns, Josh, Chuck, and Megan.
Yeah, this is Josh Grims from Berkshire. I jumped on and jumped off. Back now.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Catherine Dimitrick, staff, and we'll turn to Emily.
Emily Clough, staff.
Kyle,
Al Grenier, staff.
Sean,
Hi, Sean Coleman, staff.
and Greta.
Greta Brunswick, staff.
And Luke. Sorry, there's so many of us here tonight.
Luke Slumba, staff.
And did I miss anybody?
All righty. Next is any public comment? Hearing none, then we'll turn to the minutes. Is there a motion relating to the minutes?
I'll make the motion, and I reviewed and I have no comments.
Shocking. Second.
I'll second that, Barbara.
Okay. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
The minutes are adopted. Next item is a regional plan update by the staff.
So I have a presentation here, and I'm going to try to keep it as brief as I can. There's a lot there, recognizing that there's a lot on your agenda tonight, but staff has really been working hard, Greta, Luke, and Emily in particular, on beginning our regional plan update and starting to reach out to all of your communities. And so I thought it would be really helpful to do a quick review of Act 181 for why we are doing this regional plan update, and then a quick framework for how we are approaching the update, working with our towns. So just give me a second here. All right.
This again.
So we are doing this regional plan update because of Act 181, because as you remember, we just did a full regional plan update and then we did the energy plan amendment. So this update is really driven by Act 181, which is a really broad sweeping bill that was put into law last July 1st. And it really makes major changes to Vermont's land use and regulatory framework. So it makes changes to how the regional plans are adopted, approved, and their content and their importance. It makes changes to the state designation and incentive program, and it makes changes to Act 250 jurisdiction. And it also connects all of these things together in a way that they were never connected before. Additionally, it includes some local zoning preemptions, but I won't talk about those tonight because that's the point of this is the regional plan. So as I mentioned, it connects all of these things together. So it connects regional planning, Act 250 permitting, the state designation program, and municipal planning in a way that makes them all work together with the regional plan as the foundation for many pieces. So first, a quick table setting as to where we are right now. So Act 250 is Vermont's land use law. Right now, Act 250 jurisdiction doesn't care where you are located. So it is not location specific. Act 250 jurisdiction is solely based on the size of your project. So if you are in a town with zoning and subdivision, if you have a commercial project of 10 acres or greater, or a housing development of 10 units or more, you need Act 250. If you don't have zoning and subdivision, that goes down to 1 acre for commercial and 6 lots for residential. So it doesn't matter if you're in the, in an area that's planned for growth in your town, or if you're in a sensitive environmental area, the same jurisdiction applies for Act 250. So that was the starting point before Act 181 was passed. As part of Act 181, there are some immediate Act 250 exemptions that went into place, and it's important to talk about these because they do relate to regional planning because they're location based. And so we look at these as part of the regional plan update that we're doing. So the location based exemptions are really based on the state designation program as it existed. So many of you have designated downtowns, designated village centers, new growth centers, and neighborhood development areas. These interim exemptions use those designations as a proxy for doing long-term land use planning. So in downtowns, you could have unlimited housing units now without needing to go through Act 250. In new town centers, growth centers, neighborhood development areas, you can do up to 75 units. And then additionally, outside of village centers and downtowns, you can, for a quarter of a mile outside of those designated areas, you can do up to 50 units without needing an Act 250 permit. Additionally, there are some exemptions that aren't based on location, such as a commercial conversion up to 29 units of housing, building an accessory dwelling unit on your home, or a hotel motel conversion to residential affordable housing. What's important about this, in addition, is this is not just original jurisdiction. So if you have an underlying Act 250 permit on your property, you can still do all of these things without needing to amend your permit. So it's full exemption regardless of whether you already have a pre-existing permit. There's a whole bunch of tools in place that help people understand where those interim exemptions are. There's actually a map viewer that you can go online and see. And I'll send this presentation out to all of you, and there's a link to this in the presentation. And this, you'll be able to look at your town and see where these interim Act 250 exemptions are located. As part of Act 181, there were changes to local and regional plans. So there's a new local and regional planning goal that requires that a substantial majority of the housing to meet housing targets, and we'll get to that in a second, needs to be able to be built in areas planned for growth. We also have to make sure that the environmental benefits and burdens are equally distributed in a fair way. And then regional planning, there's a new requirement that we do equitable engagement that allows for meaningful participation. And then in terms of the land use, the regional plan, the big change is that we have to do a new future land use element, including a map. And there are new categories. There are 10 new land use categories, and all regional plans across the state will follow the same framework. So statewide, there'll be this level policy framework done by all of the regional planning commissions that will be able to be knit together to create a vision for the state. So the housing targets I mentioned in terms of the goal that was adjusted in Act 181, the state of Vermont just released housing targets for the state. And then those overall housing targets were broken down by each regional planning commission. We, in turn, need to break down those regional targets into municipal targets. So our staff will be working with the Regional Plan and Policy Committee and talking to our municipalities about an approach to breaking down this regional number into municipal numbers that make sense, that are as equitable as we can make it, given each community's ability with infrastructure and land availability. And so that is something that we're going to be working on over the coming months as we meet with all of your municipalities. And you'll see that our target's pretty high. Even, Vermont is in a housing crisis, and these targets are really meant to demonstrate to a region and to a municipality if our housing market was normalized, if the vacancy rate was normalized, if the price pressures were at a more normal rate, if availability was normalized, how many houses would we need to build or homes would we need to build in order to accomplish that? And that's, yeah.
What's the definition of a home?
A home could be anything from a studio apartment to a McMansion. So it's just a place that people can live. And so they're built into these assumptions. These targets are some, more details about the breakdown of what's really needed. And in our region and elsewhere across the state, there is really a need for smaller, more affordable mid-level units that meet the needs of our smaller household sizes. And that is one of our biggest needs. So we're going to be doing these housing targets, and I want to talk about that first because that is something that we will have to do that's not related to the designation program or Act 250. With Act 181, the regional plans have added weight, added importance, because once we adopt these regional plans, we're going to be sending them to a new state land use review board, and they are going to approve our plans. Much like we approve municipal plans now, we now have an entity that's going to be approving the regional plans and making sure it meets all of the statutory criteria. Once the regional plans are approved by the Land Use Review Board, then there will be permanent Act 250 exemptions for those municipalities that choose to opt in. And the state designation and incentive program will automatically be put in place for municipalities based on our maps. So no more municipal applications, saving that step. And I'm going to get into both of these in a little bit more detail. This graphic I'm going to show you again at the end because it's going to make a lot more sense, but I wanted to show it to you at the beginning too, because this is really the progression that we're talking about. So these future land use categories, I mentioned there are 10. All the regions across the state are going to be doing the same ones. So from downtown centers, your most built up areas, all the way to the rural conservation. We are going to be doing a regional map that shows all of these areas. For the purposes of the discussion tonight, the ones we're going to focus on are the first four, the downtown center, village center, planned growth area, and village area. And you can see as you move down the page, the downtown centers and village centers are now going to be what's eligible for this new designation called a center. And that's a new incentive program the state will be offering. And then planned growth areas and village areas will be eligible for the neighborhood designation. Moving down to Act 250, if a municipality doesn't opt in, it's status quo that I talked about at the very beginning. If a municipality opts in, then downtown centers, village centers, and planned growth areas will be eligible for, and village areas will be eligible for Tier 1 exemptions, either full exemption or partial just for housing, depending upon the particulars of a municipality. And this talks about the tiers of Act 250 jurisdiction a little bit more. Tier 1A is going to be that highest level of exemption where all projects are exempt from Act 250, commercial, residential of any size. This is going to be available really to our largest municipalities, St. Albans City, perhaps St. Albans Town, Swanton Town, maybe really the larger municipalities that have infrastructure and staff capacity. It's going to require changes to bylaws to meet some of the requirements, but it's really not going to be widely available to most municipalities. Tier 1B is available really to all of our municipalities that have zoning and subdivision regulations. So that is the majority of our municipalities. And if a municipality opts in, which is the select board chooses to participate, then projects of 50 units or less on 10 acres or less are exempt from Act 250. And then everything else is the status quo. Tier 3 is a new jurisdiction that is going to be put in place by rule. So by February 1st, 2026, the new Land Use Review Board will adopt rules about that. It's unclear what that will look like, but it will be some sort of expanded jurisdiction in our most sensitive environmental areas. Like right now, anything over 2,000 or 2,500 feet, I can't remember, is an automatic Act 250 trigger. There may be other things like that or not. That's going to happen through rulemaking. So when we do our land use plans, these are the 10 land use categories that we're going to be doing for each municipality. And the first four are the ones that will really pay the most attention to in terms of the Act 250 jurisdiction and the designation. So the downtown and village centers are your areas of concentrated growth. For village centers, there's no requirement for municipal plans, for zoning, for subdivision, or infrastructure. Every municipality that currently has a designated village will keep their village. Most likely, it might get a little larger, and the towns that don't have a designated village will get one. So that's an improvement for our municipalities who haven't had the capacity to pay attention to that right now. Planned growth areas are around our downtowns, and you have to have zoning, subdivision, water or wastewater, and complete streets, which in simple terms means people need to be able to get around if it's not just in a car. So there need to be other ways to get around. And then our village areas are the areas outside of the village centers, and you need to have zoning, subdivision, and public water or sewer or soils that are suitable for septic. So all of these areas, as I noted before, are eligible for Tier 1B, which is 50 units or less without needing Act 250. The municipality will have to choose to opt in, and as part of that, will need to self-certify that they have adequate staff to manage their local permitting process. Regional, yeah. Is there a question?
Catherine, it's Sylvia.
Yeah.
You have Alberg Village as an example. However, they don't have zoning.
They don't, but they do have a designated village, which is a state incentive program.
Uh-huh.
And so we will be mapping that.
Good, good.
So they'll be eligible for the incentives still, just not the Act 250 jurisdictional changes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so for adequate staff purposes, the Regional Planning Commission staff is going to be available to our municipalities to be backup staff if they were to get a large project that they don't feel like they can handle. So hopefully that will be a good assurance to folks that they can feel like they can say they have adequate staff.
So Catherine, I don't really understand the top, what that means. So if you've got a village center, then as a town, you don't need a municipal plan, zoning, subdivision, or infrastructure?
Mm-hmm. And it's because, so when we map
so how would you manage the exemption if you don't have any of those things?
Because you wouldn't be eligible for the exemption. So you would be eligible. So the regional plan maps are now going to show two things. One is the Act 250 exemption areas, and the other is the state designation and incentives program. And so village centers will be eligible for that incentive program, regardless of whether they have plan, zoning, subdivision, or infrastructure. Those village centers will also be eligible for the Act 250 jurisdiction changes if they have zoning and subdivision and water or sewer or suitable soils.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So here's an example of how it all comes together. This is Fairfax, and I'll say that we haven't met with the Planning Commission yet. So this is just a sample of what a map might look like. So I wanted to start with where it is. So where they are right now, Fairfax has a designated village center, which is this hash mark here. So this is the area that's currently eligible for the state incentive program. When we do our mapping, based on the statutory criteria and what's on the ground in Fairfax, that area will actually expand into this larger maroon area. So the area of town that's eligible for the state incentive program will grow. And then that combined with the pink planned growth area is what would be eligible for Tier 1B for the Act 250 exemption area. Also drawn on here is the red circle. That is what's currently in place for the interim Act 250 exemption area. So right now, anywhere inside that red circle, you can build 50 units or less without needing an Act 250 permit. When we're done our mapping, it would be the purple, the maroon plus the pink that would be eligible for those 50 units or less. So you can see as part of the planning, the size of the area might grow a little bit, might shrink a little bit, but it will just be more logical compared to the interim exemption area. But the interim exemption area wasn't that far off when you just look at the quarter-mile boundary. So it just, yeah.
Well, Catherine, on your Fairfax, you're not going to go up to the top of the hill where 128 comes out, where a lot of building is already going on?
Yeah, we can't. So when we do these maps, there are statutory criteria for each of these land use areas that we'll have to follow. And we'll balance that with the local plan, language, with what's on the ground. And one of the requirements for the planned growth area is that there is complete streets that I mentioned earlier. And so that area of town doesn't have any sidewalks or public transit or any way to get around other than in a car. So that's really the one of the major roadblocks to including that.
Okay, I understand that part of it, definitely. But I guess my concern would be looking at it, and I travel out there a couple times a week going through there, down against the river. Why would you want to have growth area down where a river is potential for flooding?
So I don't want to pull apart this map in particular, but I will note that flood areas, the floodplain and river corridors are not included in the maps. So the floodplain is shown right now is the dark green, the rural conservation, which is surrounding the river. So that is not included in the long-term map. Within the red circle, it is included in the interim exemptions because that's not based on anything other than a quarter-mile boundary from the existing village center. But there are some carve-outs even in the interim exemptions for the floodplain areas.
Okay, thank you. It just just being familiar with the area.
Yeah. And see that question that Harold just asked, those are the conversations we're going to be having with all of your planning commissions. And we will be letting you know when we meet with your planning commissions or select boards so that you can participate in the conversation if you'd like, if you're not already on your planning commission or your select board. So I just talked about the Act 250, which is the right-hand side of this diagram. And then next, I'm just going to delve into the state designation a little bit. So right now, there are 5 designation programs. There is the downtowns and the village centers and the growth centers and the neighborhood designation areas and the new town centers. I think I got all 5. With Act 181, there's only going to be 2. So it's simplified dramatically. So there'll be 2 designation areas that will be eligible for state incentives like tax credits and special grant applications. One will be the centers, and that's the downtown centers and village centers on our maps. And the second will be neighborhoods, and those are the planned growth areas and the village areas on our maps. So we'll be working with your communities to make sure that those designation and incentive areas are mapped in a way that makes sense. And once our regional plans are approved, right here, then the designations are in place and the state agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development staff will work directly with your municipality to make sure you're eligible for as many incentives as possible. So no more renewals, no more working back and forth with the state board on the map boundaries. It's just a much more simplified process. And so here's the framework again that I told you I'd show you again with our 10 land use categories across the top, and then the 2 designations and incentive program areas and the Act 250 jurisdiction changes. So wanted to hit some timing for how we're going to do this update. So right now, the staff, as I mentioned, Emily, Luke, and Greta in particular, have been really working on preparing for going to meet with all of the towns. We've already started. I've met with many select boards to just give an overview of what's coming. And there's meetings with planning commissions and town staff where they exist to start going over these maps. So we are in that process of doing the future land use mapping and the housing target development and meeting with your municipalities so that we can come up with a map that meets your needs, meets the state statute, and can work within our regional plan. So we'll be doing that through winter and spring. And then we'll hope to have a full draft of the new regional plan by mid to late summer, with the new requirement that we send the Land Use Review Board our plan 60 days in advance of our first hearing. That adds 2 months to our adoption process. So we hope to start the adoption process in the early fall and be adopted by the end of 25 or very early in 26. We've used the new public participation plan that you adopted to come up with an engagement plan that involves every place along the spectrum because of the uniqueness of this regional plan update. So we'll be informing the public, consulting with the public and municipal officials, and then evolving and collaborating with your municipal officials, because the land use plan really needs to be something that's done in collaboration with communities. And then finally, communities are empowered because they'll have the choice of whether to opt in to the Act 250 jurisdictional changes. That's it. I'll stop sharing. And I will email that presentation to everybody. And I just wanted to give thanks to Greta, Emily, and Luke, because many of the slides in that presentation were taken from one they put together for our municipal officials briefing they did last week.
I just dropped the link in the chat for the training video for municipal officials that they put on.
Thanks, Sean.
It's also on our on the front page of our website.
You're muted, Peter.
That was incredibly well done, efficiently presented, a ton of information. I'm looking forward to seeing a copy of the presentation.
Peter?
Yeah,
Peter, Howard DeMars?
yeah.
I just have a quick question for Catherine. This plan seems it's going to involve a lot of work from Northwest Regional personnel. And I know we're really busy now with things that have been going on. Is this going to be a burden for the personnel to accomplish this in the timeline set?
It'll be a heavy lift,
Mm.
but I think that we can do it. We were fortunate to be able to add Luke to our staff this fall, and that has helped from our capacity perspective. And then additionally, municipal planning grants were delayed this year. And so some of the work that we might normally be doing in this time frame on our municipal projects has been put off a little bit. So both of those things I think have helped with the capacity, but it's definitely going to be a heavy lift. I think we have a good plan internally to divide up the work, mostly the 3 people that I mentioned, but me too. And then I think we'll be able to do it. It's going to be a heavy lift for all of you too, and for the regional plan and policy committee, it will be super exciting, and I'm sure many people might be interested in joining the committee as we move forward.
Thank you, Catherine.
Any other comments? Hearing none, then we'll move on to commission reports, starting with finance and operations. Anything you want to add, Kirk, from what's written?
What's written is clear and accurate, I think.
Personnel, Bob?
Personnel committee met and we talked about the personnel policy changes that we're going to hopefully pass a little later in the meeting.
And for executive committee, it's the summary in the written part. I would add that there's a review of the audit that is not yet complete, and that's ongoing. Project review, Harold?
The project review met in January. We reviewed 3 different projects, and one of them was a Dunmore LLC. And this project has a 45-day notice for a project originally proposed in 2022 for 5 MW solar. and the committee confirmed that there is a decommissioning plan and is waiting for the final aesthetics report. The second project was Reservoir Road Solar, which we had substantial regional impact. The committee viewed it, and it met all the criteria that we needed, but because it entailed two different towns, that's why we felt that it had a significant regional impact. And this is an board action requirement. And the final one was the Malone, which is a 75 Swanton Road Properties LLC. And this was just an outline of what's going to happen out there, which is going to be a 2,450 square foot coffee shop with a drive-in through to be able to get your coffee. And the committee had a few issues with the coming off on Route 7, getting in and everything. And they were waiting for the traffic impact study. There was two other ones on the board, which the staff took care of. Emily took care of for us, which was T-Mobile in Grand Isle. And the other one was the T-Mobile on the Gore Road, and that was taken care of there. But the one project that we needed board approval on was a Reservoir Road solar project.
Okay, thank you, Harold. Before I move on, I'd note that there's some background noise coming from someone, so check whether you need to mute. Next is TAC, Harold.
Okay, on TAC, we met, and there was a couple different things that went on TAC that we discussed. And one of them was the Green Mountain Transit changing some of their routes. And the other was some of our committee, what we, how we conduct our meetings and everything. And Kyle, I believe that you might be able to share the screen of what we eliminated and what we added to that.
I think that there's a point a little bit later in the meeting for a vote from the commission, so we can go over those specifics at that time if there are questions.
Okay, sounds.
Oh, you're frozen, Harold.
Hey, Peter, while we're waiting for Harold, we need to go back and approve the action that Plan Committee took on the Reservoir Road Solar, agreeing that it is a regional impact.
Okay.
So I'd make a motion that we approve the Project Review Committee's activity on the Section 248 application on Reservoir Road Solar.
Second.
I'll second that, Peter.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, board.
Next is Brownfields Committee. Megan.
So at the last meeting, they approved assessment funds for the South Hero Meeting House. The next meeting isn't actually going to be January 27th. We moved it to February 10th, where we will be looking at 2 new site nominations.
Okay. Regional Plan and Policy, Lori?
We did not have quorum for a January meeting. We talked about, Catherine, are we going to try to squeeze one in February or just, okay, or do it in March? I'm not sure.
Okay, next is Vermont Economic Progress Council, Barbara.
Once more, the meeting got called before it could meet, so I have nothing to report. Other than we're having a little bit of trouble getting it to come to my email, and Catherine's been kind enough to forward the emails they're sending. And the one piece of information I got, Catherine, that maybe you can more delicately share with them is because they do it as a blanket email, there's 60 email addresses it's going out to. And I was told that sometimes they edit after 50, that it will not send that many. So since I'm the last on the list, that might be what's happening, because I'm on the list, but I'm not getting the emails. So.
Wow. Okay. Green Mountain Transit, Bob?
That was so long ago. Catherine, let's see. We talked budget things. What else did we talk about?
I missed part of the meeting, so what did we put in the report?
Any questions on the report?
Well, if there's anything we can look at that. Let's keep on moving. Healthy Roots, Marietta.
Hi, we met December 19th and had an update on the farm to school program, talked a little bit about the strategic plan, the state level funding has come through. There have been a number of grants, and there were 2 farm to school gatherings this fall. One was held in Grand Isle County and the other in Franklin County. And I heard that one in Franklin County was very robust with a lot of brainstorming to discuss next steps to try and get more active engagement with regional farm to school programs, and also to be more active in the role in local food sourcing at schools. I gathered that there were a lot of retirements during COVID of teachers, and so there are new leaders emerging at schools. And the thought was that Healthy Roots could really help join these new leaders together and get things moving more. We also discussed the gleaning trips. There were 8 school trips. We talked about additional potential partners with the gleaning trips, more organizational type partners. And we're also looking for a new chairperson. Emily will be finished at our next meeting. It's February 20th. And so we're hoping to elect a new one, and I think a vice chair as well.
Okay, thank you. Northwest Vermont Regional Foundation, Kirk?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Staff, any items that the staff wanted to discuss about? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next item, which is the election of a secretary to fill a vacancy, I believe, resulting from Sarah Had's moving on. I would open the floor to nominations.
I would move that we nominate Barclay Morris.
Second,
I'll second that.
other nominations? Hearing none, motion for nominations to be closed. Someone make that motion.
I'd make that motion, Barbara.
Second. Chuck, okay. We've got one nominee, so we'll just go through it quickly. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. The next is the Georgia Town Plan Approval and Confirmation, Heidi Valenta.
I think I'm gonna take that instead of Heidi because she's
Okay.
having connection issues tonight. So I have a prepared motion. We've reviewed this plan quite a few different times and had some good results from it. So if we're ready, I will just read the motion. It's
Go
long.
ahead.
Okay, the The Plan Review Committee held a public hearing on January 29th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to hear public comments on whether the Georgia Municipal Plan should receive regional approval and whether to confirm the town's planning process. After deliberation, the Plan Review Committee finds that the plan is consistent with planning goals of Title 24 VSA Section 4302, is compatible with the regional plan, is compatible with approved plans of other municipalities in the region, and contains all the elements as required in Title 24 VSA Section 4382. The Plan Review Committee also finds that the town of Georgia is engaged in a continuing planning process that includes maintaining a current regionally approved municipal plan, engaged in activities that implement its adopted municipal plan in accordance with 24 VSA Section 4382, and maintains its efforts to provide funds for municipal and regional planning purposes. Based on these findings, the Plan Review Committee recommends that the Board of Commissioners grant regional approval to the Georgia Municipal Plan, adopted January 6, 2025, and confirm the planning process of the town of Georgia in accordance with 24 VSA Section 4350.
Well done. Is there a second?
Is there a first?
She made the motion.
All right.
Well,
then
I
will
think that was
second it.
actually worded as a recommendation, and you need a motion and a second.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the Georgia plan for acceptance by the Northwest Regional Plan.
Second.
I'll make a second on that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes. And now there is a second resolution or recommendation.
I make a motion that the town does perform planning.
So you're making a motion to confirm?
Confirm that they plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Next item is bylaw changes, and Catherine's going to handle this.
Right. So this is the second time you've seen this. There was a board discussion of the proposed bylaw changes in December. The executive committee met in January, and there were no comments. Since there were no comments received by any commissioners, the executive committee made a motion to recommend the proposed bylaw changes as presented. And so there have been no changes to this draft since the last version that you saw. In addition to some housekeeping items, the major change is the combination of two committees, which is adding the municipal plan review that you just did to the Georgia, I'm seeing the Georgia note here. So I'm adding the municipal plan activities, the review that just was conducted, to the regional plan committee as one of their duties, thereby reducing the number of committees that we have of the board. And that's the big structural change. And then there are a lot of other minor changes in there too, clarifying which committees are advisory or non-advisory based on the new open meeting law and some other items like that. So I'm happy to answer questions if people have any.
Hearing no questions, is there a motion?
I was going to say, should I make a motion to accept the amended changes before we open too much for discussion?
Second.
I'll second that. Barbara again.
Any further discussion?
I have one, if you don't mind. Reading through it, Catherine, and I know it's not a change in there, but I was a little concerned over the allowances that you're given if you have to go away, for breakfast of $10 and lunch for $15 and $20 for a dinner. You can't buy a cup of coffee in the morning for $10 if you wanted a cup of coffee. I feel that should be changed.
So that's personnel policies. We'll get to that. We're on the bylaws.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Now we get to the personnel.
Is it clear to everybody that that passed with a 2/3 majority? I think it was unanimous, but
Yeah, it
it's
was
just so we
unanimous.
can let the minutes show that.
Oh, yeah.
It was unanimous.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Next is the personnel policy changes. Again, Catherine.
All right. Moving on to that one in my packet. So yeah, it's a big packet this time. Sorry about all the pages. So the Personnel Committee reviewed these changes at their meeting, and the Executive Committee did as well. There were a lot of little changes, but wanted to just highlight what some of those were, as noted in the memo. We made significant a collection of changes to the personal account time, which is our combined time off, by prorating the maximum accumulation for part-time employees to reduce the liability that the commission carries, and allowed the executive director to temporarily allow folks to go above that as needed for program and project needs. We made some adjustments to the first year accumulation to just make us a little more competitive with other similar employers, and to account for the fact that it is combined sick and vacation time. So sometimes folks need time a little earlier when they first start a new job. And then we allowed NRPC to negotiate with staff that we're hiring to give them a higher accumulation of that combined time off, giving them credit for places that they've worked before coming to NRPC. Additionally, we made the change to allow us to post internally for vacancies instead of always having to hire using a broad advertising reach for all positions. And then we corrected an inconsistency within the policies about paid leave, just to make it clear that part-time employees who work more than 24 hours are eligible for the paid family and medical leave. And then finally, we did increase the meal reimbursements a little bit.
Questions or comments?
I don't see where you increased them, Catherine.
Didn't that come through?
I would agree. I was going to ask what they could possibly have been if this is an increase.
Oh,
Yeah, because on my screen,
no,
I
you're
have.
so right. So I put it in the memo, and the executive committee talked about it, and that was changed, and then somehow that change didn't come through on this one. So if the board is amenable, the change was to increase all of those by $5. So it was to be breakfast $15, lunch 20, dinner 25. And I will note for out-of-state travel, we use the federal per diem rate, so it varies depending upon where people are going.
Okay, 'cause like I said, it didn't look like you changed anything, and I'm
Thanks
going.
for catching that. It was originally in one of the versions. I don't know what happened.
And the other thing, Howard, is if you read the following paragraph, Catherine has the ability to approve higher expenses if that should come to bear.
And has somebody go out, and they don't realize a new hire that Catherine hasn't authorized them to spend $15 for breakfast instead of 10. That may be all that they.
We don't actually do a lot of meal reimbursements. It's really waned quite a bit from earlier days, just based on how people schedule meetings now.
Any further comments?
So yeah, I guess I've got a question, Catherine. Did the other things that we talked about in the meeting get changed too? There were a couple others. Now that
I'm going to double check now.
I was trying to, there was the one of adding personnel chair and the chair as potential contacts. And then we had a typo in there somewhere that I found, but I probably couldn't ever find it again.
Yes, the executive director, that was changed. Yes, so that was changed. Yeah, so I think the other changes came through.
Other questions or comments? I guess to be technically appropriate, we should ask the commissioners who moved and seconded the motion to approve these agree to the amendment that Catherine just identified before we take a vote on it. And I forget who those were.
It was me, I agree.
And who is the
If
second?
if it was me, I agree, but I thought that was on the
No, that was on the bylaws. I don't believe there's
bylaw
been a
changes.
motion
I'm
or
not
a
sure we
second.
had.
I don't think a motion's been
I
made
don't
yet.
think we had a motion on that.
Okay.
A motion
so
hasn't been made.
I don't know how I can be more confused. So I guess
You could be me.
Yeah, go ahead, Howard.
I'll make a motion that we accept the personnel policy amendments as discussed.
Second.
I would second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is TAC rules of procedure. Harold.
Okay, the TAC rules of procedures, we just changed a few things on it. And Kyle, do you have the changes that share the screen with?
I'm not sure that I can share a screen, but I'm happy to just go over a couple of them.
I think they all
That'd be
came through in a
perfect.
packet.
Okay, perfect. So just kind of really briefly at the last couple of TAC meetings where we've discussed this, we included that the TAC will adhere to the NRPC public participation policy, which is new for us. And then the other substantial change was we have identified that the TAC will follow the NRPC conflict of interest and code of conduct policies. Everything else was really just kind of things that have changed over the years, dates that things happen, and so on, and striking out a few things that Catherine has enlightened me have not existed maybe for a very long time. When she told me I needed to look for a WordPerfect file, I figured it was time to just redline that out. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Didn't we also decide to change the election of officers to be the same month as NRPC elections?
I think we said that it would be in June. So if that's the same month, yes.
And then were the major changes that we made to the to make sure that we are following what the Northwest Regional Planning Commission already has in place.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes made to the TAC rules of procedure.
Second.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next and I think last substantive item is a code of conduct. We have an existing code of conduct. It was adopted in 2023, I believe, and the code requires that it be periodically reviewed and approved. So the purpose tonight is to just present again these code of conduct and solicit comments that anyone has. If they have any tonight, that's fine, or if they want to provide them after the meeting, they can do so. There's a code of conduct committee consisting of Harold, Yvonne, Chip, and Nicole, and any of those could receive comments, or Catherine, that people might have. Generally, the code addresses general conduct. It addresses participation in meetings, including open access laws and so on, open meeting laws, compliance, and has provisions for enforcing claimed violations of the code of conduct. I'll leave it at that. Does anyone want to make any comments tonight? And again, if not, then people are free to provide comments, written comments afterwards, and we can go a month or two and then see if we have any comments and discuss them, and go about reapproving it. So any comments on this code of conduct? Okay. Hearing none, then that's just for your information, and we'll be taking it up again if we get any comments. The last item is commissioner announcements. Bob.
I've actually got one potential meeting item for the next meeting. Now that we have elected Barclay to be the secretary, there is an opening on the executive committee for a member at large. So I don't know if anyone is interested, or if Catherine's already whispered in somebody's ear to make them apply for that, but we should assign that rep at the next meeting.
Thank you, Bob. That was going to be my non-commissioner, but hope you let me comment anyway comment, which is that there will be now an opening, and it's an easy lift position because you don't have to be the chair of a committee to do it. It's a great entree into leadership at the board. So happy to answer questions anybody has about it. They can certainly reach out to me or to Peter, and it will be an agenda item for your next board meeting.
Alex.
Hi, I just wanted to extend a happy update from the town of Alburgh that we have officially broken ground on the Alburgh Family Clubhouse, the childcare facility, and we want to extend our gratitude to the NRPC for helping us get to this point. So look for us opening our doors, I believe, in the fall, and we're really excited for what this means both for our town and for the entire region. So thank you.
That's good. Barbara?
Thank you. I was having a little trouble. I was seeing the clap as a raise hand, so it kept disappearing on me. I just wanted to speak personally that as a member of the Fairfax community, we're very honored for Sarah's being chosen, but also a little bit sad that we've lost her incredible talents. And I think, as this group knows, as she was a member of this group as well, she's going to be a great asset where she's moved to, but all of us that have lost the more immediate connection are feeling a little bereft. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
I think that's the sympathy that was expressed at the executive board.
Yes, absolutely. And what an honor. Any other announcements?
I have one last thing that maybe we should discuss, Peter. I don't know if everyone's seen the new state ethics certification course requirements. And I think we all need to make sure that we attend that and we're all certified.
I have not seen that. Is that something that can be circulated?
The state has circulated them to local officials, so I'm not sure why we wouldn't have the same requirements. Maybe I'm wrong.
There's different. Yeah, I think there's only some small parts of that actually apply to the Regional Planning Commission. I was looking at that in detail a couple of weeks ago, and I'll take a look at it again and make sure I pass on anything that does pertain to us in terms of the requirements for training.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine.
Any other announcements?
Not really an announcement, but I realized how long it's been since I've seen Sean, and I like the facial hair. You're doing a great Santa Claus.
Sylvia.
Yes. So I'm on our school board and our supervisory board. And as everyone knows, Governor Scott has released his education transformation proposal through his secretary. I really, really encourage, because most of us are representing rural towns. This is proposing, we were discussing it last night, Grand Isle County would be a full tuitioning school district. We would not have, it would eliminate all our schools, and we would be busing completely out of the county. And another thing, as I'm reviewing it, because it's a multi-page and online, that any school closure, if this goes through as it is, and we all know proposed legislation is not going to be exactly the same come May when the legislature adjourns. However, one of the things it does say is that it will be a state decision to close schools, which schools to close. I think that's problematic. And one of the things we walked out of our meeting was there is a small community alliance group that has formed. And we are all going to go to our select boards and ask them to pay attention, because I can only speak for our county and the folks who are in Grand Isle and Alberg and South Hero, that without our school means we're without families, which we're going to be really hard to have fire departments, rescue, just the basic functional needs of a community. I feel it's just gutting our rural communities, which I'm very perplexed by the governor's direction on this. But I really, and I'm happy to share that link to the report or send it to Catherine, and you can send it out, Catherine. But it makes me think, because I was on the school board when we had Act 60 come through, and that was a huge, it was the leap from very local control to state collection of taxes. And it just feels the same way. And if anybody wants to learn more information about it, it's out there, and I really think it has huge impacts on our rural communities. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sylvia. And I assume that each town's school board is also very plugged into this and is another source of information.
Well, it was originally the supervisory union chairs and superintendents that received it. And it was received last, as far as the alliance, but this was, just in the last week. But there's an opportunity to form alliances that like maybe 6 or 8 towns have already started. But I just, to propose that the closing of a school in a community will be decided by the state and not the local community, I find it very problematic. So anyway, I'll send to Catherine, and Catherine can share. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other announcements? All right. Is there one last motion?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second that.
We are adjourned.
Thanks,
Thank you all
everybody.
very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.